All right, so hopefully you're in the right place if you're here. I have to remember, I have to stay back here, otherwise this won't work. So my name is Mike. I'm going to be showing you how to take a file that I downloaded from data.gov containing, it's actually over 7,000. I like to underplay things. Points of interest are actually farmers markets all over the country, and we're going to use the feeds module to suck those records in. We're going to display them, and then we're going to map them, and we're actually going to build a proximity search, all in the next 45 minutes or so. So it should be fun. If my clicker decides to work. There we go. Oh, golly, decides to work all at once. There I am. So this is me. I'm one of the owners of Drupal Easy. We're a consulting and training shop based in Florida. We do a podcast that some of you may have heard. I do Drupal training, and I'm Ultimike pretty much everywhere, Twitter, Drupal.org, everywhere else. So quick warning. While you will see all the steps, I will not, this is meant more to inspire than it is to teach. This is a way to show you what's possible with Drupal if you know what you're doing with just virtually no code. I tend to talk fast, so this type of presentation suits me. Hopefully it'll suit you as well. But luckily what I've done is there is a screencast about the site build, as well as a rather lengthy blog post that goes into all of the gory details. That's available on DrupalEasy.com, which I will put up at the very end. So if you see something that flashes by really quick while I'm building it, feel free to ask about it if we have questions at the end. But don't fret, because there's a screencast that does this whole thing that you can stop and pause and rewind, as well as, if you'd rather read the details, they're available as well. So as I said, this is meant to inspire. A lot of times, you hear how powerful Drupal is and how quickly you can build things, but then you go back to your desk and you bang your head against your keyboard for 3 hours trying to figure out why this particular module doesn't work. But once you start gaining confidence and you start learning tools, you start gaining confidence, and that's what this is kind of all about. All right, so what are we going to do today? So how many people have been to data.gov? It's a great clearinghouse for public data. So I went to data.gov, and I was actually looking for a fairly sizable data set that was clean and had geographic data associated with it. So what I found was data about farmers markets. It had descriptions, it had physical addresses, and it also had lat-long, latitude and longitude fields for the farmers markets, which made it ideal for this type of presentation. That way we don't have to wait for all of the nodes to get geocoded. So we're gonna take that data, we're gonna stick into Drupal, and we're gonna do that using the feeds module. How many people have used feeds? All right, feeds is incredibly powerful, and you can do a lot of things with it with zero code. And the example I'm going to show you, while it works great for this data I've downloaded, if you have data in an Excel spreadsheet, you can use the exact same method to get that into Drupal, either as users or nodes or taxonomy terms. And then we're going to use the geofield module to store the lat and long, as well as to display that data and to help us do a proximity search. So at the end of this session, we'll have a Drupal site where we can say, show me all farmers markets within 5 miles of whatever the zip code is here in Austin. Or you can type in Austin, Texas, or you can type your address. So that's kind of cool. All right, so the data we're getting, over 7,800 farmers markets from data.gov. The only thing I did to the input file, to the spreadsheet that I downloaded, I deleted some extraneous header and footer rows, and then I saved it as a CSV file. I'm a big believer in that the source data is sacred, and I'm not going to mess with it. Even if I see a typo in it, I'm going to leave that, and I'll fix it on the Drupal side, or I'll fix it during import or something. And you'll see there's a couple of cases where we actually massage the data a little bit on its way in. But as far as the spreadsheet's concerned, the only thing I did was get rid of some header and footer roles that would have messed up the feeds import. So the fields that we're dealing with, and when I say fields, all I mean is columns. Just picture a spreadsheet with these columns. FMID, which I can only assume is Farmers Market ID. I think that's a pretty safe bet. Market name, website, the address, the URL if the farmer's market has a dedicated website, the schedule, which is just a text field that someone gets to type in every Saturday from 9 to 5. X and Y are longitude and latitude. They're named X and Y in the spreadsheet. Who knows why? Don't care. Location, again, is a text field, in the parking lot next to the bank, something like that. Then there's a bunch of category fields, which we're not going to really deal with today, but the category fields in this spreadsheet say things like fish, bread, butter, and they're just yes and no fields. If the particular farmer's market has fish, then there's a Y in that field. And there's probably about, 15 or 20 of them. And then another update time field, which unfortunately is not consistent at all. Some fields just have a year. Some fields have the date written out, September 14th. Some of them have a timestamp. Some of them have 3/19/2012. So I had to bring those in just as a regular text field. If this was something that it was a little bit more serious rather than just a presentation like this, I could have written a little bit of code that would have tried to figure out what the heck format that data's in and then converted it to a timestamp. In this case, I just said, we're just going to bring it in as a text field because it's mainly for display. So we're going to use the dev version of the GeoField module. Anybody use GeoField? It's really, really cool. If you're doing anything with geolocation, address fields, latitude and longitude, this is the way to go in Drupal 7. Unfortunately, the current version doesn't have the proximity stuff, which is kind of crazy because the proximity stuff has been in there for months and months. But if you use the dev version or any dev version later than January 13th, then you get it, and it's hugely stable. I've been using it for a while. I don't know if you remember when I showed you the data fields, there is no country field. City, state, zip. The address field module, which we're going to use to store the address, requires a country field. So we somehow have to manufacture a country field. So we're actually going to use the rules module to set a default value for that field. But I'm going to go through that as well. And then we're also going to use another module called Feeds Tamper. Anybody use Feeds Tamper? Another really cool little module. And it lets you get in between the import. During the import, when a piece of source data comes in, the Feeds Tamper module lets you act on that data before it gets saved into Drupal. So I actually wrote a patch for the Feeds Tamper module to convert full state names to two-letter state names. Because in the spreadsheet, all the state names are full. Connecticut, Florida, Texas, Louisiana. The address field module wants CT, LA, TX, FL. So we somehow have to do that conversion. Since I've written the patch, it's actually been accepted to the Feeds Tamper module. So now, if you download the current dev version of Feeds Tamper, you get that plugin for free. So as of a month or so ago, there's no code involved in what I'm going to show you at all. It's all just, as long as you use these two dev versions, you can do everything I'm about to show you with no code. Address field module, I mentioned, we're going to use that. Depending on time, OpenLayers module to do some of our mapping, not all of it, just because I think OpenLayers is cool and more people should be aware of it. And then the one big gotcha on this is we're going to need the Geo Coder module. And what we use, the idea behind geocoding is that you can give a geocoder a textual address. Either a zip code or a city state, or a street, city, state, and that gets passed to a geocoding service. In this case, we're going to use Google's. And Google looks at that text string and gives you back a latitude and longitude based on that text string. So if you pass it a zip code, it'll give you a latitude and longitude for the center of that zip code. If you give it a full-on street address, it'll give you a latitude and longitude for that street address. So we're going to use a Geo Coder module for our proximity searching. So that when people want to do a proximity search, they can say, show me all farmers markets within 25 miles of, 123 Main Street, or 32952, or Austin, Texas. Those will all work. So it's a lot of really cool modules that I think a lot of people have heard of but haven't necessarily used, that we're going to use them all here in the next few minutes. OK, so yeah, enough of me talking. Let's get going on this. And this is kind of my magician trick where I show you that, well, actually, I'm going to show you nothing until I share my screen. There we go. Let me see if I can show you a little bit more. Oops, displays, display. I think yesterday I bumped this up a little bit and it worked. OK. There we go. All right, so we have a fresh Drupal site. Empty database, this Drupal Easy install profile that I just clicked on that I'm installing right now. Brand new database. The Drupal Easy install profile that I just showed you, all that does is just install some modules that I like the admin menu. It turns off overlay. It does some other just basic site stuff. Download some modules that I use a lot, like views and stuff like that. Has nothing to do with this particular presentation. Any questions yet? Hurry up, we have 29% before I'm going to start talking again.
Does your install profile put them in the regular, like, sites all modules? Or
Yeah. No, it actually puts them in sites all modules. Actually, sites all modules. Oh, I'm sorry. The question is, does the install profile put them in the normal place? And yes. Most install profiles, it'll actually, yeah, that's the way install profiles work. They put them in.
Distributions put them in other places.
They put, yeah, distributions put them in the profile on the root of your site. All right, so we will call this FM Austin. And the password will be admin. If anybody wants to steal my computer, you get all the work that comes along with it. I'm doing all this locally as well. OK, so, So brand new site, empty, no content. We've all been here before. That's the start of a big project. All right, so what do we need to do? The first thing we need is we need a place to put our data. So what are we going to do first? Create a content type. Thank you. All right. So content type, add content type. And I'm just going to slide this over a little bit because I got my little cheat sheet so I don't forget anything, which is peeking out. Farmers market. We don't need that on the home page. We don't need author information. Is that big enough? I can go bigger. Save and add fields. All right, well, we're not going to need this body field, so we're going to get rid of this. All right, so first thing we're going to do, we're going to add a lat long field. And, oh, no, I actually already forgot to do something. We have to enable a bunch of modules. So I'm going to use drush. To enable address field, feeds Tamper, geo field, looks like it's, that's it. Geo field map, job scheduler, which is required by rules, feeds, GeoPHP, rules, and open layers. So all I'm doing is just enabling a bunch of modules. And yes, I definitely want to do that. GeoPHP, I always forget if that's separate. I can tell you in a second. It is, yeah, it's required. I always forget if it's a separate module or not. I can tell you, though, in my notes. Yeah, if it's a separate module. OK, so now if I refresh this, now we can do what we need to do. So we're going to store the latitude and longitude in a single geo field. And we get a bunch of options over here. One of them is latitude and longitude. That's the one we want. So what the geofield module actually does, uh-oh. It's always bad when, at the very beginning, when things like this happen. Let me flush caches. Let's try it one more time. Oh, boy. Yeah, no. The table already the table already exists. Yeah, I don't know why that would already exist. That's kind of a... Is there data in there? Oh, I thought I cleared all these out. No, I'm gonna hit the history eraser button here real quick.
Don't worry, it's never happened to any of us.
Well, what happened was I went through the presentation this morning, and I thought I just deleted the database, and apparently I didn't. So I'm not sure why how that happened, but that's all right.
Critical clients database that you deleted.
Yeah, I know. Jeez, I hope not. Okay, so let's just do FM Austin. What is going on? Oh, I know what I did. The database is still there. I'm so sorry about this, but we'll get it right. Sudo rm sites default settings. That password you can't have. Let's just start over again here. Double check, make sure the database is empty. Yes, it is. OK. Don't worry, I've done this before in 26 minutes, so we should be OK. It's really puzzling. I'm wondering why that happened now, but oh well. Figure it out in a couple minutes. All right, so remember we did this before? I like to repeat myself a lot. That way the lesson really sinks in. So this is how you install a Drupal site. This is what happens. So if you don't see this when you're installing a new site, there's probably a problem. The Drupal Easy profile. It's available on GitHub. In the blog post, there's a link. The question was, what's the name of the profile? As you can see, it works great. So. All right, it's hopefully second time's a charm here. Okay, admin, go. Copy that. Visit your new site. Yahoo, get rid of that thing. Enable modules. I'm going to check my database here really quick. Make sure I don't have that. All right, I don't see it this time. Refresh. All right, hopefully we're okay. I don't see it there. Okay, so we're going to create our content type again. We'll very quickly be into new territory, though. Farmers market. That should be singular if you were in the semantic session that I was just in. We don't need comments. We don't need menus for this. Save and add fields. And get rid of the body field. And then, God willing, we can add a lat long field. Lat long. Fingers gray. All right. See? Nothing to be afraid of. All right. And a lot of this stuff, default values are going to be fine. All right. So we need that. If you remember that there's a website field, so we're going to bring that in as a link. That makes sense. Why bring it in as a text field when we have a dedicated link field? We don't have a title associated with that link. All we have is the URL, so we're going to set that to no title. And then remember we have the location details, which is just some text about, it's in the parking lot next to the Kroger's. So we're just going to add that one in. Default values are fine. Then we have a schedule field. This one I actually, took me a couple times before I kept on getting bugs during import, and I couldn't figure out why. It kept on crashing. Then I realized some of the schedules are longer than 255 characters. So I couldn't use a standard text field. So that's really where knowing your data a little bit helps. So that's why we're going to use long text, because some of them are, a paragraph long. And again, default values for all this stuff. We just need a place to put some data. And then last updated. And we're just going to stick that in a text field. I think that's about it. Address. Oh, we forgot about the address. Yikes. I'm going to do that one still. Default values for all this stuff. And then the address. That's the field type. The address field gives us this postal address field type. Really, really powerful for those of you who haven't used it. Which countries do you want available? Well, ours are all in the US, so we'll just set the US. Everything else is good. And I think we're good for that. Okay, so we have a content type. So if we wanted to, we could come in here and manually enter, 7,800 farmers markets, and that would kind of suck. That would be a long weekend right there. But all of our fields are there. So the next thing we need to do is we need to build the thing that ties our data to this content type. What's the big vacuum cleaner that's going to suck all this data and spit it into the right fields? So we're going to use the feeds module for that, and we're going to build a new importer. So for those of you who haven't used feeds before, the idea is that you build an importer that is dependent not only on where the data is going, but also on where the data is coming from. So in our case, it's coming from a CSV file, a local CSV file. Feeds is actually very good for, as its name implies, for sucking in RSS feeds and other type of feeds that are available via a URL. In our case, we're going to use it to suck in a local CSV file. So we're going to add a new importer, and we're going to call it the farmers market importer. And we've got 4 main settings over here on the left. Basic, fetcher, and this is the mechanism that actually gets the data. The parser is the mechanism that knows how to read the data file and parse it into its individual fields. And then the processor is more on the Drupal side, is, OK, hand me these fields, and the processor knows what to do with them and knows how to, in our case, create nodes of type farmer's market out of it. So we need to go through each section and kind of configure it. So basic settings. Only thing we really have to do here is basically say we don't need to do this periodically. We need to do this once. And we're going to do it whenever we submit that import form. And that's it. Again, if you're looking at an RSS feed, you might want to be setting the periodic import to once a day. So that once a day, this importer will go out, ping that feed. If there's anything new, then parse and process. In our case, we don't need that. So the fetcher, out of the box, we get a couple changes. And there's contrib modules that give you more fetchers, more parsers, and more processors. Feeds comes with just a few of each. The fetcher, we have a choice of file upload or HTTP. In our case, it's a local file. So obviously, we're going to use the file upload. And you can see that is now set under here under the fetcher. Settings, nothing we have to do here. Allowed file extensions. The one we need is right there, CSV, so we're just going to leave that. The parser, again, we get a couple of options here. RSS, CSV, OPML, as well as XML. In our case, we have an Excel file, which I've saved out as CSV. Should be pretty self-explanatory which of these we're going to need to choose. And now the parser is the CSV parser. We can look at the settings. Our delimiter is, in fact, a comma. Some CSV files use tabs or pipes or other things. If we didn't have headers, if we didn't have that one row up top that had our field names, we would check this. In our case, our CSV consists of data and a single header row that is just a name of our fields. So we can leave that the way it is. And with our processor, we can create nodes, we can create terms, or we can create users. Obviously, for this case, we're fine with node processor. So we can go to the settings and the bundle. So what do we want to create? We want to take the data from this CSV, and we want to make farmers markets nodes. So we're going to select that. As far as updating existing nodes, let's say we do this import today, and then a month from now, there's a new CSV that we can download with updated data. Well, as long as we're smart about our configuration and we utilize that FMID field as a unique field, which I'll do that in a minute, we can click Update Existing Nodes. So that when that CSV file gets updated and we re-import, it won't create new nodes. It will look at the incoming FMID and say, oh, you already have an FMID like that, so I'm not going to create a new one. I'm just going to update the one that's already there. So that's really, really quite powerful. But you have to set it up not only here, but also in our mapping, which I'll show you in a second. Everything else we can pretty much leave. Well, the author we can change. This is one of kind of the limitations of the feeds module is it doesn't handle references and relationships really well. So if we were sucking in these 7,800 farmers markets and each one had a unique author that was also a user, feeds doesn't really have the capability to assign, to figure out who the proper Drupal author is for each record. So it's kind of as you suck in every single one, they're all going to have the same author. Choose who you want it to be. In our case, we're just going to make it admin because that's the only user on the site right now. I'm going to uncheck this box, even though it doesn't really mean anything. This just ensures that the author has the create farmers market node permission. In our case, as admin, they have all permissions. And we never want to expire nodes. We never want the nodes to automatically go away. So we save that. All right, so next up is the most tedious part. And you can kind of imagine what the next step is how does Drupal know, what to put in the title field? It's got all these fields from the CSV. How does it know that market name, the market name column in the CSV, needs to go in the title field on the Drupal side? That's what this mapping page does. It maps the source field to the destination field. So this is the most tedious part, but I type pretty fast. So the name of the source field is market name. And because we told, here, let me make this even bigger. Because our bundle is farmer's market, the map feeds is smart enough to pull in all of the available fields on for the farmer's market content type and put them in this dropdown. So the market name is going to be our title. Let me see if I can. I got to make this a little bit small. There we go. So we save that one. And then we have the FMID field. And this one's a little bit special. We didn't actually create a GUID, a globally unique ID field. We kind of get that for free as part of feeds. And what that does is that's kind of the map between the source primary key and the Drupal primary key. So this field is what lets us do those updates when a new version of the CSV comes out. So if we save that, and then we come in here and we specifically tell it, these values are unique for every record, and then we save that, we've basically just told feeds that, this FMID field is unique. So in the future, if you update and you see an FMID that we've already sucked in before, update it in place. Don't create a new one. All right, so we got that. I got my list of, there we go, OK. So we can start with street. And that is actually address, thoroughfare. So they had to make these names in the address field work globally. So they don't make any sense, at least to me. This is city is an administrative area. And state is, I believe, the let's see. Locality. There we go. I got them written down over here just in case, because I can never. State. Oh, I had it backwards. Arr, thank you. Now I got to remove them. I know. All right, so city was what? Locality, thank you. L for locality.
Where is that GUID stored?
Where is the GUID stored? That's part of feeds. It's not.
Gotta go with the node.
Well, no, what happens is feeds has a lookup table between the node ID and the, yeah. Yeah, so the question is, where is the GUID stored? All right, and this is, now I forget, administrative area, right? I better check. State is administrative area. OK, yes. Zip is the only one that makes sense. And that's postal code. So be really careful that when you're typing in this source, this has to be exactly the same as the field name, the field header in your spreadsheet. I think we're up to longitude and latitude. X is longitude. Y is latitude. And then I think we have, let's see, website and then location. So website. We're going to map the website field into the URL colon URL field. So remember, the link module gives us a URL field as well as a title field. Remember, we chose to not display the title field, so we have to make sure we put the URL in the URL part of it. And then the location field over here goes into location details. And then there's a schedule, which goes into the schedule. And I think that's it. Let me see. Oh, update time. OK. And the update time field goes into the last updated. Double check that FMID is unique. It is, so that's our mapping. So remember, these, your source fields, if you look at the spreadsheet, I mean, it is camel case update time, exactly like that. They have to be exactly the same. Otherwise, Feeds is going to say, I'm supposed to have a source field called update space time, but I don't see that, so you're not getting anything. So make sure that, this side matches the spreadsheet, and this side's a little bit easier because you have the drop down. All right, so now if we ran the import at this point, we would get most of our data in. We have our fields mapped, but we still, and if we did it, like the first time I did this, you'd have a couple issues that you'd be looking at going, what happened? Why don't I have an address for anything? And it goes back to the thing I mentioned before, is the address module requires a country. We do not have a country field to give it. So we have to set a default value for the country field for every record as it gets imported. So we're going to do that with the rules module. So I'll hit save just in case because I'm anal retentive. So we go to the rules module. How many people have used rules? How many people have written a custom module? OK, so those of you that have written a custom module and haven't used the rules, you're doing it backwards. Because normally when I think I need a custom module, I'd say 50% of the time I can get by with just a rule. It's a great way of not having to write code. So we're going to create a new rule. And the reason why we can do this, we can create a new rule is, let's see, set add. Oh, there we go. Add default country. We're going to give it a name. The reason why we can even do this is because the feeds module exposes an event that's really helpful. Before saving an item imported via your importer. So we can get in the middle of that process. So during import, every time the feeds module hands Drupal a new record and says, OK, here you go, rules module can say, oh, hold on, let me make sure there's no rules that want to act on this. And if there is a rule that wants to act on it, basically the feeds module hands us the data, hands the rules module the data. We can do what we want, and then we pass it along. So it's a really slick way to get in the middle of an import and massage the data a little bit. So that's our event. So whenever this happens, we're going to check for a condition. And this is kind of one of those funky rules things, but we're going to make sure that the entity, being the node that we're importing things into, actually has an address field. It seems like a silly condition because, of course, it has an address field because that's the way we wrote it. But rules doesn't make any assumptions. So in order for this rule to actually do anything, the first thing we have to do is say, OK, you sure you have an address field? Because we're going to give you something to put in that address field. So before we give it to you, you have to confirm that you actually have something to do with it or have somewhere to put it. So we're making sure that the node that we're going to pass the data to has an address field. And if it does, our action is we're just going to set a data value. And this is kind of the trickiest part about rules, is learning this little crazy interface right here, this data selector. But it's node, field address, country. So we want to set the value of the country part of the field address field of the node. And rules are smart enough to say, oh, OK, well, I know what type of field that is, so I can just show you the widget that's assigned to it. So it actually gives us the widget we need where we can say, OK, well, it's going to be United States. And obviously, this only works because all of our farmers markets are US based. All right, so that's one of our little tweaks that we had to do. The other tweak we had to do was the CSV file has the state names written out, completely. Address field module doesn't like that. It wants two-letter standard postal abbreviations. So we have to get in the middle of that and convert Texas to capital TX. And that's where this Tamper module comes in. Drupal's great for, hey, there's this great new module. Go ahead and download and enable it, and then good luck trying to figure out where it even exists in the admin area. Tamper's a great example of this, where you won't see Tamper anywhere up in this menu until you have an importer. This is, that's the big shining Tamper, administrative link right there.
You get lots of error messages about Tamper though once you install it. The release version of it.
Yeah, there is. There's, I think, like PHP notices, like undefined variables. Yeah. So, so the comment was you get a lot of errors. Not really. I wouldn't call them errors. They're warnings, notices. They're mostly harmless. Well, they're all harmless as far as I've seen so far. But what the Tamper module lets you do is it's kind of like what we did for rules. It lets you get in the middle of the import process. So the feeds module has gotten the data, and it's about to give it to Drupal, and the feeds Tamper module sits in the middle and says, oh, hey, if you want to give me something, I can run some code on it for you. So you can see we have all of these mappings, market name to title. We don't need to do anything with that. We can import those directly. The FMID to the GUID, the street to the address. The one we need to deal with is this state to administrative area. So we're going to add a plugin, and the plugin we're going to add is the one I mentioned before, the one that, does exactly what we need. Converts a full US state name to an abbreviation.
That's part of Tamper.
The dev version of Tamper. Yep. Eventually they'll be part of the full release. They just hasn't happened yet. So that's it. Full state name to abbreviation. So at this point, we're basically done. We can run our import. So we go to /import. We come here, and as a good first run, if you've got a large data set, take your data set and just take out like 25 lines. Take 25 lines, put it in a separate file, and test on those 25. Don't test on all 7,800, because if something goes wrong, you'll be waiting, and then you've got to roll them all back. So I'm going to do the same thing. I've got a little file with just 5 of those farmers markets. And this is a snap. There you go. 5 are imported. If we come over to our content page, we should have 5 new farmers market nodes. And I know that this Zion Canyon one has a bunch of data in it. So what do we got? We have a title. The lat and long are there. A URL. Location details, schedule, we've got data everywhere. Last updated, and we have address, which means our feeds Tamper worked, as well as our rule worked. If either of those didn't work, the entire address would be blank. So we know that we're good. So we can come back here and import the big one. So this is about 2.5 megs. And we're just going to let that go for a minute or two. So that's half of what we wanted to do. The first half is we wanted to get that data into Drupal, and that's happening. The second half is we want to do something. We want to make that data useful. We want to make it searchable. We want to make it so it does something useful. And all we need to do that is create a view using the proximity filter that comes with the dev version of GeoField. So if we come over here and go to views, we're going to add a new view. Proximity search. We're going to show content of type farmers market. We're going to show a GeoField map of fields. We're going to show, let's say, up to 50 at a time. We don't need a pager. We need a couple of fields that we're going to add. We need a lat long field, and we need the proximity field. So the lat long field we need so that the map knows where to put each point. The proximity field is kind of a made-up field. That gets calculated in real time, the data in that field. So when someone says, show me all farmers markets within 50 miles of my house, there's a lot of muscle going on behind the scenes that basically fills out that proximity field and says, okay, well, this farmer's market, I'm going to do the calculation of how far this one is from Mike's house. and I'm going to put the value in miles in the proximity field. So every time there's a proximity search, it does that. So we need both those fields. We don't need to show the lat long field, so we can exclude that one. And we can show the proximity field. That's, that's kind of handy where, we could show a list of farmers markets and say this one is 4.3 miles from your house. So that's kind of handy. The source of the origin point. So the proximity field needs to calculate a distance between the farmer's market and some origin. The origin is whatever we type into the proximity filter. So that's this last option down here, which we haven't created or we haven't exposed it yet, but we're about to. See how we're doing over here? Almost halfway, or a little more than halfway. Filter criteria, we're going to add our proximity filter. We're going to expose it, otherwise it's not really much use to anybody. And we're going to say, by default, show me stuff that is 25 miles. And the source of the origin point, our option that we actually need is not available yet. The Geo Coder module actually makes that option available. I'm not going to enable the Geo Coder module till the import's done. Otherwise, every time a node gets imported, Drupal's going to try and send that to Google to get geocoded. And we don't need it geocoded because we already have a lat long. If we were importing data that just had an address and didn't have latitude and longitude, then we would need to geocode on import. And the importing would take a lot longer. Because for every record that came in, it would send a call to Google saying, hey, can you give me lat long for this address? And actually, for a data set this size, Google, I think, will do 5,000 of them and then say, go away for a little while, or pay us money, or something. So until the import's done, I don't have all the options I need, so we're just going to leave that. The other thing we can do is we can change the exposed form to input required, meaning it won't show us any results until we actually submit a proximity search. That's just a little nicety. And we can leave all that. And sort criteria on a map doesn't really matter, right? Because it's on a map. So we can get rid of that. You'll see I have actually a completed site. I do the cooking show thing where I put this one in the oven and I take out a completed site from another oven. I actually have a sub or a attachment display that actually has a listing as well. And that's sorted by proximity, ascending. All right, so let me save this just so I don't lose anything. Let's see how close. Oh, we're so close. And we're going to be done by 1:30. Sweet, even with a screw up. All right, so you see we've actually updated 330 nodes. The reason is, and someone helped me out yesterday in doing a quick query on the CSV, is that there's actually 330 duplicate records in the source file. So that's kind of cool. So we actually created 7,500. And then later on in the source file, 330 were duplicates, so those got updated. So the data, one of the things I teach in my migration class is the number one assumption is your data is never as clean as you think it is or you're told that it is. It's always dirty. And in this case, it's a little bit dirty. All right, so if we look real quick, let's just do one spot check. There's a lot of them. Weed CFM, wow, that's a cool sounding farmer's market. Not a whole lot of information there other than an address. It's in Weed, California. Okay. Fantastic. I'll just go with that. All right, so now I'm going to come to the modules page, and I'm going to enable Geo Coder. There it is. Turn that on. So now if I re-imported, it would be sending out to Google. So knowing when to turn this thing on and off is kind of important. Come back to our proximity search. I'm going to refresh just for good measure. I'm going to come over to this guy. And now the source of the origin point is going to be a geocoded location. And you'll see, now instead of having a lat long box here, we just have a place to type something. It's exactly what we want. We do that. We hit save. The URL of that proximity search is just proximity-search. OK, this is just because we don't have any data in there yet. So Austin, Texas. Let's hope it works. Oh, no. Let's see. Oh, I know what I did. I forgot in the settings for the geofield map, I have to tell it which field actually contains the latitude and longitude. That would be very helpful. And I can set this, apply, save. And like I said before, all of the gory details are available as a blog post and a screencast. So there's a map, and there's Austin. There we go. And the nice thing is that we can zoom in. We can click on one of these. We can click on that. And if we had more time, we could actually turn this field into a nice open layers map. You could use Display Suite or something to make this display a little bit better. So now I'm going to do the cooking show thing. So if we bake this for a little bit while longer, let me show you the source data real quick. I've got 2 minutes. Because I actually went ahead and I wrote some custom code to handle all of those category fields that we talked about. I want to show them to you real quick. Oh, recover. All right. Oh, sure. I guess it needs to be recovered. There we go. Ah, it was there a second ago. Oh, I don't know what that is. There we go. Well, there's 5 nodes there, but tiny. View, zooms, variable, 200%. Yeah, so you can see, there's cheese, crafts, flowers, yes, no, yes, no. So I wrote some custom code that took all of that and turned it into a vocabulary. So if we put what I've started here into the oven and bake it for a little while, and this site is actually a live site that you can go visit and play with. It's farmersmarketnow.com. I took an off-the-shelf theme. I think it's called Best Responsive. It's on Drupal.org. I found some Creative Commons fruit images. And yeah, so now not only can you search by this, but we can say 25 miles from, where's someone from? Give me a zip code. Dallas. All right, go Cowboys. Let's say we're looking for a farmer's market that has meat and nuts 25 miles from Dallas. And yep, there you go. Is this the right one? Dallas Farmer's Market. And here's the display attachment I told you about that lists them all as well. It shows you about how far away they are. That's kind of nice. You click on one of those, and there's an open layers map, which is a little bit different style map with the schedule, and it shows you everything that's available there. And there you go. Any questions? No? You guys are kidding me. All right, so hold on. Drupal.
How did you add in the
on the home page, how did I add in this advanced options? That's just another exposed filter. It's on the view. It's an exposed filter of the whatever the name of the vocabulary is. You absolutely can. Yep, you absolutely can. It feeds Tamper. If I can't massage the data with a rule, I could create a custom rule, but it's easier. I think it's easier to create a custom Tamper plugin. So whenever I have to write code for feeds, I'll use a Tamper plugin just because I'm more familiar with it. I can do that a little bit quicker than creating a custom rule. Yeah, so. Any other questions? Yeah, that's I'm looking up right now. There you go. I actually think I have a, I thought I had a short URL for it. Let me look. Add a redirect? URL redirect. No, but I will add a redirect right now. We will call it just FM. So if you go to drupaleasy.com/FM, hopefully that will work. Let's find out. Yep, drupaleasy.com/FM. There's the blog post, and did I not attach the screencast to this? Maybe I didn't attach the screencast to it yet. I have. I may have just not done it, but the URL is FM. There you go. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. Have a good lunch.